Okay, as promised, I'm going to be talking about how to create controls and rigs, but I'll start with what we call IK handles that will control a series of joints. So when we talk about IK and FK, what do we mean? They represent what we call kinematics in 3D, and kinematics is the science of motion. In the case of skeletons used in 3D, kinematics specifies the motion of bones. So we have two of this. We have the forward kinematics and the inverse kinematics. So the forward kinematics is called FK for short, and the inverse kinematics IK for short. In forward kinematics, the child objects are animated based on transformations of the parent object. So basically what we have when we just move our bones are forward kinematics. FK has to do with rotation of an object, while the inverse kinematics is the opposite of what the forward kinematics do. So in this case, it introduces a goal. So when you take up the inverse kinematics and try to place it on the points, the rotation depends on where the goal is, as wherever we position the points or the kinematics to, that's where the joint chain rotates to. So for inverse kinematics, you can use the object at the bottom of a hierarchy to animate the entire chain. So if you move a child object, the objects that are higher in hierarchy will also move accordingly. So when it comes to kinematics, we just know that FK is set by default when you create your hierarchy. It's the basic way of moving, where if you just move one joint, every joint connected to that joint moves with it. If you want to get something to rotate to a particular angle, you have to do that manually. But when it comes to inverse kinematics, once you click on the joint and move its position, so every joint rotates towards that goal where that position is being placed. So inverse kinematics is most preferably used. The forward kinematics is very basic. So what's going to happen is I want to show you how the two of them work, and then we will now talk about the application of the inverse kinematics to our model here. Okay, so I'm just going to go into side view. Just want to show you. So let's say I take my skeleton bone and I make a joint chain here. Okay, and I make another joint chain here. Basically something similar. Okay, so I'm going to explain forward kinematics and inverse kinematics using these joint chains. So when you select a joint like this in its basic form and move it in these forms, this is what we generally mean by FK. Okay, so if I need to lift up this knee to rest somewhere here on this point, or maybe take this leg and let's try something here. Create a cube. So just gonna scale it up a little bit. Shift this guy forward. Now duplicate this cube, put it on here. So they all have something in front of them. Okay, so now if I want to place this leg on this cube, I won't be able to do that without moving the whole hierarchy. Okay, so if I have to do this, I will have to click here, lift this one up. Okay, then probably come down this way. You still want to move it forward, and then I've placed the leg on that cube. Okay, but with inverse kinematics, all I do is I attach a chain or a connector to this joint, and then moving it will be seamless. So I could go into my rigging, and this is my IK handle, so I can just click on it, and what I need to do is select one point of the joint and select the next point that I want to connect to. So I just select one here, then I click here, and now I have a chain. So to lift this leg to this point, I don't need to adjust all this. I just take this one up and bam, and you see it creates a very realistic movement, very typical of human movement. So with the IK handle, positioning is very easy because it deals with a particular goal. So once you position the IK, it rotates the joints to fit, and using the last part of the hierarchy here, I can control every other part of the hierarchy. Okay, so now with let me go to a brighter. Okay, that's so now for this leg, if I want to come back down, I have to move down here first, then take this guy back again. Right, if I have to make a kick, a forward kick, I have to raise this one up and then try to raise this one up and then try, and you can already see the problems I'm having here. Now, apart from the issues of trying to adjust every single joint, you will notice that in my adjustments, I'm actually changing the sizes of my joints. They are growing longer or shorter. Like if I raise the knee up, you can see it's making the thigh a little bit shorter and stuff. But with the IK handle, now I'm selecting the IK, not the joint itself. I'm selecting the IK. Okay, so the IK handle, see, whatever position I want to raise, the joints remain long, and if I try to stretch beyond the joint doesn't follow. Okay, so it maintains the offset that it's had when it was created. So that's the power of the IK, and that's why it's very useful for animation or character creation. So I'm going to use the IK handle. I'm going to explain. We actually have two solvers when it comes to IK handles. We have the RP, which is the rotate plane solver, and we have the SC, which is the single chain solver. So if I double click on my tool here, you could see under my IK handle settings, current solver, I'm using the single chain solver. That's why we have a single chain here. But then we also have RP, which is rotate plane solver. So now I'm going to select the rotate plane and attach it to this joint here. So rotate plane, then pick this, select this, and select this. Now you will notice if I come in to my perspective view, I'm just going to take this down. That with my single chain solver, I just have a single chain, but with my RP solver or the rotate plane solver, I have a sort of rotate plane, and this enables me to position my objects in space, the rotation of my object. I have a single chain and a rotate plane, and with my rotate plane, this helps create more detail to the rotation of a chain and precisely positions a joint. So for instance, if I want to rotate this knee joint and I select my single chain solver here, all I do is just rotate, and you see it's rotating the knees. Okay, so there's nothing wrong with this, it's okay. But if I want to have more control of my rotation, I'll be using my rotate plane solver. And the way to rotate it, you can see this disc right above here. it's not necessary to use this point because it doesn't rotate with that point. It rotates from here. So if I want to rotate my chain from this point here, I can't select it from there. If I want to select it, I have to use my manipulator tool. So I just first go into the channel box, come here under modify, transformation tools, show manipulator tool, and that's my manipulator tool here. So once I move it, you see it rotates the joint precisely along the perimeter of this disc here. So it makes rotation very easy for me and more precise, because now with this white kind of angle, I can point to a specific position I want to rotate the knees to. So I mostly use my rotate plane solvers when I am connecting hip joints and shoulder joints, and I use the single chain to connect any other joint. But I can use either of them. It doesn't really matter. They are both effective in their own special ways. So, but those are the two solvers when it comes to IK handles, and you can also change them in the attributes editor. So like right now, this is a rotate plane solver. So I could just come here under the handles. I can come here to IK solver attributes, then change here from rotate plane solver to the single chain, and it becomes a single chain solver again. Okay, so and that's how we rotate for all these connections here. So I'll select that and go to rotate, and you can see it's now a single chain solver. Okay, so we're going to to our bones right now. Let's delete all this. Get back to my skeleton here. Okay, so we're going to add a solver for this leg and this leg, and for the shoulders. So for our IK, I want to use rotate plane solvers for my knee. So let me explain some of these things here. I forgot to do that. If you notice here, we have solver enabled, we have snap enabled, sticky. Now with snap enabled, if I create a joint chain and the snap enabled is not there, then I can move the joint out of the solver. Let me just show that again. Let me just show that. Just thought about showing that, so let's just put something like this. So you'll see why I said we shouldn't draw on the perspective view. You see what happens here. Okay, so let's go into the side view. Okay, and 1, 2, 3 feet. Enter. Let's view forward. Okay, so now if I create my IK and let's say the single chain, for instance, and I go turn off the snap enable, I go 1, then 2. Okay, so if I select my joint chain, for instance, and raise it up, you see I can raise the joint away from the IK handle, and that's not exactly what I want to achieve with that. So, but if I come in here and enable the snap, so I do that again, okay, now I will select the joint chain and then move it. You see the IK is snapped to the joint, so it moves in the direction of the joint. Okay, Another thing about sticky, like I said, I may not want to do that. Now, what does sticky mean? Like you see, as I was carrying the leg, it was going up. But if I want to create a realistic movement, like when he jumps, it's like the leg is stuck to the ground, which is a quite realistic event. I will turn on sticky, and then when I create the joints, the IK handle, and I try to move the joint, you see the joint works as if it's stuck to the ground. So the IK is stuck to the ground, and the joint is moving as if there's gravity holding onto it. So this creates some very realistic movement. So okay, and this is what actually happens when we do character modeling. You want to create a sticky joint that kind of makes everything stuck together. So I just thought I'd show that and let you know why these guys are used. So let's just delete this guy right now again, and let's come back. This time I want to be in two views. I want to have the side view. Actually, we could use the front view, but let me use the side view. Alternatively, I can still use this view. So let's just work the way we are now. So for my IK handle, I want to use the rotate plane solver, and I want to select the first joint in my hierarchy here, which is the hip, then the next joint, which is the ankle, and then I create an RP solver there. Okay, now I'm going to do it for the other side as well. Hit Y on the keyboard, hit this, hit that, and now I have two joints here. So when I go in to move this joints, you can see the joints are moving along with it. Okay, the only thing I can do is I can't rotate from that angle. Okay, if I want to rotate with this, I have to rotate from here. Okay, but as long as movement is concerned, I can move the joint. So we can see that the joints are attached perfectly. Then let's go and do the same for the shoulder. So hit Y on the keyboard again, hit one for the shoulder, one for the wrist, and then we have Nike. Okay, then we hit for this one as well. Y on the keyboard, one for the shoulder, one for the wrist, and then we've created a Nike connection. Okay, so now we have the IKs connected, and anytime I want to move or rotate my joints from this point, you notice that I can't do it with this. I have to use the solver itself, and if I select my IK now, I have to use my manipulator tool to rotate that joint. Okay, so that's actually a good thing to some extent. Okay, so next I want to go and create the other rigs. I'll create some more IKs. I want to create controls that will put around the shoulders, the elbows and the wrists to control rotation and movement, so that we don't need to select the handles of the IK, because when this model is actually bound together, it will be very hard to select some of these controls. So we have to create external controls that we would use to manipulate the model more effectively in a rig. So that's what we'll be going into next.